Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the RDX Sports Podcast. I'm Simon Head. The UFC were back in Rio for the first time in a long time this weekend, with one of the biggest stars in the sport headlining the card. UFC Fight Night Oliveira versus Gamrot delivered a host of wins for the Brazilians. 8 out of the 13 fights on the card produced a Brazilian winner on a big night for Brazilian mixed martial arts. Let's take a look back at the best of the action from UFC Rio right here on the RDX Sports Podcast. Let's go. Okay, there really is only one place to start. That is the main event. Charles Oliveira taking on Mateusz Gamrot, the most prolific finisher in UFC history, versus the man who had never been finished in his mixed martial arts career. Something had to give in that main event, and it was Mateusz Gamrot's unbeaten record. Unfortunately for him, he loses by a face crank submission, second round, 2 minutes 48 seconds. I think it was officially announced as a rear naked choke, but in my report I called it a face crank as well. It looked like Oliveira couldn't get the arm under the chin of Gamrot, who had that chin really well tucked. Instead, Oliveira went for the crushing power of a face crank and eventually got that tap just past the halfway point in that second round. Interesting matchup because Charles Oliveira was supposed to be facing a pure out-and-out striker in Jafel, who the head striking coach at Tiger Muay Thai, one of the best strikers in the UFC. And then with a couple of weeks out from fight night, Fiziev has to pull out from the fight. In steps Mateusz Gamrot, who is the complete opposite of Mateusz Fiziev in terms of fighting style. Gamrot will strike if he needs to, but he's basically a grappler. He is a submission artist. He is a wrestler. He will get the fight down and look to be dominant from top position. He's not likely to do too much to you in the stand-up realm. He'll beat you with strikes on the mat, but not necessarily in the stand-up. So how would this fight differ from Jafel Fiziev? Quite a lot, because Gamrot is just going to go straight for the takedown. And that's pretty much what he did. He got Oliveira down relatively early in the first round, took top position, and it was like, okay, this is going to be interesting. How will Oliveira do from a defensive grappling standpoint? Well, he wasn't really defending, was he? He was attacking off his back. And even though Gamrot had the dominant position in terms of being on top, he was the one having to do all the defending. Oliveira threatening with an omoplata. Then he transitions to an armbar. Then he eventually takes Gamrot's back towards the end of the round. And despite the fact it was he who had been taken down, and he was the one on his back for almost 3/4 of the round, I would say, it was Charles "The Bronx" Oliveira who was the one pushing the pace, chasing the finish, and looking to get the job done in that first round. And when initially Gamrot looked to take him down in what was an offensive move, as soon as the fight hit the mat, he had to play defense for the rest of the round. That tells you just how good Charles Oliveira is for someone like Gamrot to be forced onto the back foot so easily and so quickly in that fight. But Gamrot got to the end of that first round. He had his back taken in that first round and was having to fend him off in the closing seconds. Then in the second round, we saw a little bit of the more of the same, a bit more striking in the stand-up realm. Gamrot trying to get Oliveira comfortable, maybe to open up another takedown opportunity. The fight did eventually hit the mat again, but this time Oliveira got to the back really quickly, and he wasn't fighting off his back this time. He was in more of an attacking posture, more dominant posture. Actually on the back, mounted the back of Mateusz Gamrot, got control of Gamrot's back, and eventually locked in that face crank submission. As I say, going for the rear naked, couldn't get the forearm under the chin. Gamrot had it tucked really well to defend. Obviously a very seasoned grappler himself, knew what he needed to do, but there was no denying Charles Oliveira, who switched to the face crank, applied the squeeze, and even someone as tough as Mateusz Gamrot, who, as I say, never been finished, could not do a thing about the crushing power of Charles Oliveira's face crank. And that was it. 2 minutes 48 seconds. And Charles Oliveira has done pretty much everything in the sport, right? He has the UFC records for most finishes, most submissions, and most post-fight bonuses. He earned another win this weekend. He earned another submission this weekend, and he earned another bonus this weekend. So big night for the Bronx. But what's next for him? Like, he'd faced Ilia Topuria earlier in the year, and to be honest, he got absolutely marmalised by Ilia Topuria, who now holds the lightweight title. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I don't really know what other options were available to him except for the one that he came out with, which was the absolute perfect call out. Max Holloway for the BMF belt. What more can we possibly ask for? I mean, he is someone who deserves to be in a big fight. He is someone who deserves to be in a main event of a pay-per-view, and he's someone who deserves to be fighting for a belt. His problem is he cannot fight a featherweight anymore. Absolutely cannot fight a featherweight anymore. He's not big enough, I don't think, to move up to welterweight. And the man who's holding the belt at 155 pounds just obliterated him last time they fought. So he's got a bit of a problem. Thankfully, the BMF belt exists. And thankfully for him, the man holding that BMF belt is none other than Max Bless Holloway. And I think that is an absolute no-brainer matchup. It'd be interesting to see if the UFC matchmakers agree. To me, that's perfect. And to Max, I think he'll probably quite like that challenge as well. So we shall see how all that pans out in the coming weeks and months. But it might be a bit of an ask to turn Charles Oliveira around in time for the December pay-per-view. Maybe that January pay-per-view might be doable, or perhaps February. But we shall see what happens on that front. But Charles Oliveira, great call out. The crowd in Rio absolutely going crazy for him. As they did for Jose Aldo, who was not on the fight card. Obviously, he has now retired. He got his moment. He got a walkout, which was a great touch. And even on commentary, Michael Bisping was like, I'm really jealous of this. I wish I could have had this. Walking out in front of his home fans to lay the gloves down in the cage. But great moment for Jose Aldo. Very emotional moment too for him and his family who went in the cage. But to see someone as, you know, as revered as him in his hometown, the King of Rio himself, getting one more moment in front of his fans was something very, very special indeed. So along with all of the Brazilian wins that we saw on Saturday night, seeing Jose Aldo getting in there once more to lay the gloves down and bid farewell to the fans in his hometown was a special thing indeed. But yeah, the night belonged undoubtedly to Charles Oliveira, who was getting incredible support and incredible reaction all week long. I saw someone online, I can't remember who it was, said that Oliveira in Brazil is even more revered than the likes of Anderson Silva was in his heyday. So that gives you a sense of just how big of a deal Charles do Bronx Oliveira is. I mean, I remember earlier in his career, he was this super talented featherweight fighter who just stubbornly refused to move up to lightweight when it was obvious that he needed to, and was depleting himself at the weigh-ins, struggling to make weight, and then fighting depleted and sometimes not really getting the result. Either he was breaking in fights, or he just wasn't all there in fights. Moves up to lightweight, and then we see the real Du Bronx, Charles Oliveira, going in there, just putting people away left, right, and centre, and eventually capturing that lightweight title, losing it on the scale, infamously. I think it was in New York, where I think the scales that day were a little bit iffy. They weren't in sync with the check weight scales, if I remember rightly. And he lost his title on the scale, and never got it back. But a great champion, someone who does a lot of great work in his community as well. He received the Forrest Griffin Community Award from the UFC at the recent UFC Honors in Vegas this past summer. So, you know, doing great things inside and outside the cage under the banner of the UFC. He moves on with his 21st UFC submission under his belt, and another post-fight bonus to go with it. Charles Du Bronx Oliveira, will we see him against Max Holloway? Fingers crossed. All right, let's take a look at the co-main event. We talk about all the Brazilian winners on the card. Deiveson Figueiredo, of all the Brazilians going into this, really did need the win more than most. He was on a 2-fight skid. He's moved up, the former flyweight champion of the world, of course, moving up to bantamweight. Much more of his natural weight class, I would say. But finding himself in there no longer as the bigger, stronger man. at 135 pounds, and in there with Montel Jackson, who the man has enormous hands. His hands are huge. He wears like double XL gloves or triple XL gloves. He, for a 135-pound fighter, has fists like sort of, I don't know, like hams or something. I don't know. They're absolutely massive. Um, he was on a 6-fight win streak heading into this. And while he was ranked below Deiveson, he was certainly the one with all of the forward momentum heading into that fight. And I think many people thought this was the fight that if Montel could get the win, then we're going to see him elevated into contender status, perhaps even in a title eliminator fight next. He had all the momentum with him. Deiveson Figueiredo put on a great performance, though, and a split decision result in the end, which I thought was a little bit surprising. I thought Deiveson clearly took it 2-1, but it was a close fight, competitive fight nonetheless. But Deiveson Figueiredo getting the job done, 28-29, 29-28, 29-28. Huge win for him. Gets himself back in the win column, and it was a really interesting and a nice post-fight interview from him. You see fighters when they're so full of adrenaline, they're they want to take on the world and all the rest of it. And he was kind of joking that, bring Alex Pereira in here, I'll take him on right now, sort of thing. But he was all very tongue in cheek and joking around. But he wants to get in there and take on the champ. He wants to face Merab Dvalishvili, but he's not. He's self-aware enough to know that his standing in the division right now is not where it needs to be for him to get a title shot against Merab. Merab is obviously running through opponents in devastating fashion, just dominating them left and right. That it might not take long before Deiveson is in title contention. He's probably going to need another win. Merab's going to need another title defense. And then by then, maybe Deiveson could be in a position to challenge, and it'll be a new contender, a fresh face, and a new matchup for Merab, which I think the UFC are going to want, rather than just keep running rematches. So we'll see what happens with that, but that's what he wants. He said he's got to do a lot of work to get there. But just looking at his record here, since he moved up to bantamweight, he beats Rob Font on the scorecards. He submits Cody Garbrandt at UFC 300. He decisions Marlon Vera. Then he loses 2 straight. He loses on the scorecards to Pidi Yan, who looks like he's going to be next to challenge for the belt. Former champion, of course. And then he gets beat by Corey Sandhagen. He sustains a knee injury in the second round in that fight, in the main event of their UFC Fight Night event in May this year. So that meant he was on a 2-fight skid for, I think, the first time in his career, just spinning back through his results. Yes, it was. First time he's ever lost 2 straight. So big moment for him. He couldn't afford to lose 3 straight in his new weight class. He doesn't. He gets the win. Split decision. Some people will look at that on historically and go, "Oh, he only beat him by split decision." I think that was. I don't think you could argue that he won that fight. I really do. I think he won that fight relatively clearly. Slightly surprised, as I say, by the split decision verdict, but he gets the win that his performance deserves. He is now back in the mix at 135 pounds. One more big win for him. Maybe a title fight is in his future, and we shall see what happens for the God of War, Juice de Gara, Deiveson Figueiredo, 37 years of age. Time is running out for him. He needs to get things done nice and quickly. So expect a big fight for him next. And if he gets a big win, he'll be screaming from the rooftops for that title fight at 135 pounds. Speaking of fighters trying to establish themselves in a new weight class, Deiveson's obviously had a few fights at 135. Someone making their debut in the UFC at 170 pounds was Spain's Joel Alvarez, who had looked great at 155 and looked like a potential contender. But a few issues on the scale sort of started to show over recent fights. And it was like, okay, is he really a lightweight? Is he going to be better off moving up to welterweight? Well, he moved up to welterweight on Saturday night and got a unanimous decision victory over Vicente Luque, who perennial ranked contender at 170 pounds. One of the toughest men in the division. A man who's been in there with a who's who at 170 pounds. And it was a dominant win for Alvarez. Wins the fight 30-26s across the board. But should that really have been the official result? I would argue no. I think this fight should have been ruled a first round TKO victory for Joel Alvarez. And let me explain why. Alvarez hit Luque with a, I think it was a left hand, and he hit him, and he caught him with like the outside of the thumb. It's almost like a ridge hand sort of scenario. Caught him with the outside of the thumb there, and it hit him in the eye. And Luque immediately pulled back, was in clear distress, claimed he'd been poked in the eye. And given that he'd been hit with a knuckle from the thumb, you can kind of imagine why. But it took an instant for the replay to show that it was a legal shot. Referee Osiris Meyer, who I don't know Osiris, we don't see him that often in UFC events, did not handle the situation very well. I think is probably the kindest way to put it. First of all, he pauses the fight, which I think most referees in that situation, if they're not 100% sure, if they think an eye poke may have occurred, you pause the fight, okay. But we have replay available. I think replay assist is available in Brazil. I'm happy to stand corrected if that's not the case. But there was the replay was there. We saw immediately that it was a legal shot. And there are a host of errors then happened, right? So number one, the fight was waved off. The referee clearly waved the fight off. I don't know. More possibly should have been made of this, because the ref waved the fight off. You can't stop the fight and wave it off and say, "Oh, actually, I've changed my mind. We're putting it back." He waved it off, and that should have been the result there and then. Even if that had been a mistake, he had waved the fight off. So at that point, the fight should have been ruled a TKO victory, or at worst, a no contest, right? Because the referee stopped the fight. But it looked to me as we were watching that Vicente Luque unable to continue at that exact moment. Referee waves the fight off. Should be a TKO win for Alvarez. We get the replays multiple times to show that it is a legal shot. Then the referee calls in the doctor and allows Luque a 5 minute or up to 5 minute injury timeout. Neither of those two things should have happened. Once you know, I don't know what the communication was from cage side here, because under normal circumstances, you have a referee. It's normally the ref who works the prep point. They also will keep an eye on the replay side of things as well, and they will communicate. They're the out of cage communication with the in cage ref. So I don't understand what happened here. That the referee outside the cage, unless replays are just not allowed whatsoever in Brazil, which would be strange. Why that wasn't communicated, I don't know. But to me, it looked like it absolutely should have been a TKO for Alvarez, because Luque could not continue at that point. He needed a medical. He needed a doctor into the cage, and he needed a medical timeout or an injury timeout. Neither of which should have been afforded to him. So this is nothing against Vicente Luque, by the way. He was just reacting to what he thought was an eye poke. Wasn't an eye poke. So what should have happened was, referee pauses the fight. Immediately should get told by the second ref outside the octagon, having checked the footage. This is a legal shot. Fight must continue. At that point, the ref must say, fight continues right now. Can you go? If Luque cannot go, the fight gets waved off, and that's it. That's how it should have gone. That's not how it went. We saw that Luque had an injury timeout. We saw that he, I think the doctor checked him as well. Loads of time to get himself back, and then the fight continues. So at that point, Alvarez has been denied a first round TKO win on his first welterweight fight in the UFC. Then Luque starts to get back into this. He starts throwing some stuff and landing some shots of his own. It's like, okay, what happens if Luque goes on and wins this fight? This is going to be super controversial. We didn't have to worry about that, as it turned out, because Alvarez just went on to absolutely dominate the fight. He looks like a monster at 170 pounds. He was a big, scary guy at 155, but he was also depleted. At 170, I think he's a future contender at 170 pounds. I really do. I think to do what he did to Vicente Luque in the way that he did it was really impressive. Now, Luque is not at his best. I think we've seen the best of Vicente Luque. He's been through So many wars, so many wars. And actually, I was slightly surprised that the corner didn't pull him out before the third round. It looked like they were going to. Henry Hooft in the corner was clearly considering it, and I think was just waiting for. He wanted Luque to give him the word, and Luque wouldn't, because Luque's a fighter, and fighters tend not to do that, right? I think sometimes the corner men have to take that decision out of the fighter's hands, especially when they've been getting battered for 2 full rounds. It's like they're not exactly in a position to give um, a clear-minded decision, and stubbornness and a willingness to carry on can sometimes be dangerous. So I think that they should have pulled him out at the end of the second round, but they didn't. They sent him back out there for one more. He lost that round as well, and ended up being a 30-26 scorecard from all three judges. Yoel Alvarez, I think, is going to be a problem at 170 pounds. I really do. I'm looking forward to seeing who they match him with. A fight I would love to see. It won't be the next one, I don't think. But Yoel Alvarez versus Crikey. There's so many. There are so many. There's so many. Let me pull up the UFC for the UFC welterweight rankings. There are so many good fights at 170 pounds. The one that immediately leapt to my mind was Alvarez versus Bilal Muhammad. But there are so many others. He's got to get up there to face Bilal Muhammad first. He's not ranked as of the time that I'm looking at this. Luque has obviously fallen out of the rankings, so I'm not sure if that win will get him in there. But I'm just looking at some of the names. Colby Covington is still ranked 10th in the UFC welterweight rankings. Answers on a postcard. I don't know why. He hasn't fought in forever. I can't remember the last time he beat a ranked opponent. But Yoel Alvarez versus Colby wouldn't be a bad fight. But Yoel Alvarez eventually against Bilal Muhammad, I think, would be an absolute banger of a fight. We've got a ways to go to get there. Yoel's probably going to need to win one or two more. Bilal maybe is going to need to lose one or two more for them to sort of meet up in the middle. But that's a fight I would love to see a bit further down the line. And in a division where it's dominated with strikers in the main, Alvarez is someone who is very well rounded, but he's outstanding on the mat. Loads of submissions to his name, but he's dangerous on the feet. But he gets most of his fights done on the mat, so he brings a different dynamic to the welterweight division. So looking forward to seeing who they book him with next. If you're looking, I would book him within that 10 to 15 range in the rankings. Colby's ranked 10th. Gilbert Burns is 11th. Jeff Neal's 12th. Daniel Rodriguez 13th. That sounds like a good one as well. Gabriel Bonfim 14th. Kevin Holland at 15. I mean, I would tell Colby Covington he's got a fight to keep that ranking, and Yoel Alvarez versus Colby Covington I think would be a good fight, because Colby's a pressure fighter, loves to push forward, loves to use his wrestling. Yoel Alvarez, while not the same style, he likes to push forward. He likes to use his wrestling as well. So that could be an interesting matchup. Who knows? We'll see how things go moving forward. But Alvarez is going to be a factor at 170 pounds. Mark my words. He looks very, very good. And a big win for him in Rio de Janeiro this past weekend. Okie dokie. Let's talk about Mario Pinto taking on Jhonata Diniz at heavyweight. This was a fight that I kind of circled on my fight card leading in, thinking this fight will not need the judges, because Diniz is a former kickboxer, a very, very high level kickboxer at that. Gets most of his wins by KO. He's transitioned very well to mixed martial arts and came into this one at 9-1. Mario Pinto come up through the European scene, Portuguese, trains in England, was the Levels Fight League heavyweight champion, got his shot in the UFC, made his debut, got an incredible knockout of Austin Lane. Now he takes on Jhonata Diniz. Who would win this fight? Mario Pinto gets the job done in the second round. Looks incredible. He's going to be a problem. He's an immediate threat in that big heavyweight division. Heavyweight division needs new blood, and Mario Pinto is absolutely the sort of thing that the heavyweight division needs. Um, Obviously, he's being Portuguese, addressed the crowd in Portuguese after the fight, and then kind of threw a bit of a curveball. Like, he told Michael Bisping that he doesn't speak much English, which Bisping knew that he speaks perfectly good English. His English is as good as Michael Bisping's English, pretty much. I mean, he's got the London accent, he's got everything, and it was fun watching social media and watch the crowd react when Pinto just flipped the switch and went to proper London English and just gave a cut a brilliant promo in English at the end. And he's an entertaining guy, and he's good. He's very good. He's got knockout power on the feet. He's got excellent grappling. He's got a good corner and a very experienced heavyweight fighter in his corner in Stuart Austin, who has a win over Tom Aspinall on his record. For anyone interested, he beat Tom Aspinall in Bama back in the day. I might even have been there for that. That was a long time ago, but when Aspinall was just on the way up, and there was a lot of hype on him then, but there was a lot of hype on Stuart Austin back then as well, and Austin got the job done on that night. And Austin still can go. He was fighting in Octagon not all that long ago, and looked like he was in a position to challenge for the heavyweight title, and then I think things happened contractually, and he ended up departing the promotion. But he's still a very, very good heavyweight, and I think he could probably do a job in the UFC, and certainly put away some of these prospect level fighters in the UFC. But he was in the corner for Mario Pinto this weekend, and would have been very happy with what he saw. Pinto's definitely one to follow. Definitely one to follow. That was a lot of fun to watch. And before him, on the main card, the main card opener, Khan Offley versus Ricardo Ramos. First round rear naked choke. Ramos looked like he was going to rip Offley's leg off in the first few moments of the round. Looked like he had a heel hook. Knee bar. Then he looked like he was trying to transition to a heel hook. Offley did really, really well to defend those. Showed a lot of composure. He's got the whole of the crowd chanting, "You're going to die" at him while he's having his leg sort of cranked in various different directions. Eventually, he escapes, gets to Ricardo Ramos's back, and breaks him. There's no other way to describe it. He gets on Ramos's back, rear naked choke, repeated attempts, one after the other, and eventually Ramos cracks, and Offley gets the win. He's shushing the crowd. It was a fun moment to watch. 3 minutes 2 seconds, and Khan Offley, who needed a win. I think that was his first win in the UFC. That was a big one for him. Kicking off the main card, rear naked choke finish, 3 minutes and 2 seconds. Good performance from Khan Offley. That is your main card wrap up for UFC Rio. Charles Oliveira defeats Mateusz Gamrot by a second round submission. Deiveson Figueiredo defeats Montel Jackson via split decision. Alvarez defeats Vicente Luque by landslide unanimous decision. Mario Pinto TKOs Jhonata Diniz in the second round, and Khan Offley defeats Ricardo Ramos via first round submission. All right, let's very quickly run through the preliminary card results. Michael Aswell Jr. defeats Lucas Almeida, first round TKO. Great performance from him. Absolutely demolished Almeida, who didn't really look like he belonged in there, to be honest. They did not look remotely the same level of ability. Aswell just put him away in devastating fashion. That was super impressive from him. Jafel Filho defeats Clayton Carpenter via first round. Kimura, the pastor who walks around with a Bible every time he wins fights. Very passionate, competitor. Clearly very strong in his faith, and was quite emotional after his win. That was a good performance from him. Carpenter likes to get the fight done on the mat himself. Was just overpowered and outmatched a little bit by Filho, who is a very dangerous black belt and a very experienced one at that. The heavyweights were in the cage earlier. Vitor Petrino knocking out Thomas Peterson with one of the most nasty KOs you will see this year or any other year. Hits him with a two-piece, and Peterson sort of gets knocked out from the head down. It's sort of like it was kind of weird situation where actually no, it's more from the feet up because his feet gave way first. He sort of collapsed down to his knees and then his head sort of face planted into the mat. Very, very nasty looking knockout. Vitor Petrino, when he puts his hands together like that, is a bad man. He's a real threat, and he got the win in the third round. There was some tricky moments in the first couple of rounds. Peterson looking to land some shots on him. A lot of clinch work involved, but yeah, once we got to the third round, Petrino really let his hands go. Fight changed. The fight changed, and I think cardio was a big factor in that fight as well. By the time we got to the third round, Peterson was knackered, and Petrino looked in much better nick. And yeah, through that lovely two-piece combination that just knocked out Peterson just in phenomenal fashion. One of the KOs of the year, without doubt. That will be on the end of year highlight reel for sure. Big win for him. Big win for Bia Mesquita taking on Irina Alexeyeva. Second round rear naked choke submission. Bia Mesquita, multiple-time jiu-jitsu world champion. Many gold medals in that ladies' trophy cabinet. Trains at American Top Team and won the LFA women's bantamweight title before joining the UFC. That I think it was her debut in the UFC, and what a performance that was. She gets a bonus for that performance as well. Vitor Petrino, by the way, he also got a bonus for his knockout of Peterson. But Bia Mesquita, Beatrice is a full name, but she's listed as Bia by the UFC. Yeah, second round submission, just too good on the mat. You do not want to go to the mat with this lady. She will choke you out or take one of your limbs home. So, very interesting addition to the women's bantamweight division. And if her striking is even remotely serviceable, then she's going to be a very dangerous person to deal with at 135 pounds. Lucas Rocha defeating Stuart Nickel 30-27s across the board in their flyweight matchup. A women's strawweight, Julia Polastri getting a third round TKO of Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Karolina's been around for a long time, former title challenger. Epic fight with Ioanni and Jacek in a losing effort back in the day. And I know she was looking to sort of build a little bit of momentum again, but that's her third loss in a row. You wonder what that might mean for her UFC career. She's been a great servant to the UFC, and she trains out of ATT as well. I wonder whether they'll keep her around for sort of give her one more fight, but we shall see. That was a tough loss for her. Julia Polastri though looks like a potential contender of the future. She picked up a bonus for her performance. Beautiful head kick and follow-up shots from Polastri getting the job done. That was a really big performance from her. And then the first fight tonight was supposed to be at 135 pounds. It was contested at 144 pounds. That's because Simon Oliveira, who needed to hit 136 pounds at the official weigh-in to hit the non-title bantamweight limit, came in at 144 pounds. 8 pounds over. 8 pounds. Basically, he was a featherweight. 145 pounds is a featherweight. 146 for a non-title fight. He comes in at 144 pounds for a 136 pound fight, which is pretty unforgivable, really. I think he had to forfeit 50% of his purse for this fight. I believe so, to Luan Lacerda. And Lacerda puts him away in the second round with an armbar finish. You've got to worry about Simon Oliveira's employment prospects at the UFC right now. I mean, that's not good for him. I think he's lost a few in a row now. He's missed weight by a huge margin, and then he gets submitted in the first fight of the card. So, not good night for Simon Oliveira. Big night for Luan Lacerda. Gets the job done. So our Brazilian winners overall, from first to last: Lacerda, Polastri, Rocha, Mesquita, Petrino, Filho. So that's 6 in a row on the prelims. Then you've got Figueiredo and Oliveira at the very top of the main card. It was a fun night. I enjoyed that fight card. There was a bit of everything going on. A couple of decisions in there, 3 in fact, but they were all, everything was pretty entertaining, I thought, and lots of finishes, lots of personality, lots of different ways to win and lose fights going on in there. A good mix of mixed martial arts, I would say. But and the atmosphere was great. The Rio crowd, they really brought it for their fighters on Saturday night, and it was a big night for Brazilian mixed martial arts. The 2 big names on the card got big victories, and a whole load of up and coming prospects picked up important victories. Some of them in highlight reel fashion. So I think if you were overseeing Brazilian mixed martial arts, or you had an overall vested interest in Brazilian MMA and the success thereof, you'd look at that and go, that was a good night at the office. That was a good night at the office. The crowd delivered, the event delivered, the fights delivered, and the local talent delivered as well. All in all, a good night to be a Brazilian mixed martial arts fan. That was UFC Rio. Also on Saturday night, we had Matchroom Boxing holding a double header of events. One in Sheffield, England, one in the United States. Jerome Boots Ennis with an incredible first round knockout victory over their stateside, and I know Matchroom are going all in on Boots Ennis as a potential pound for pound number 1 of the future. But for me, my attention was on what was going on in Sheffield. Dave Allen, the White Rhino, a remarkable story, really, sort of a Cinderella man of UK, of British boxing. Someone who has been in and around the scene for a long time. He's won a lot. He's lost a few as well. But on his day, he can be a real problem for people. And he took on Arslanbek Makhmudov in the main event on Saturday night in Sheffield. Huge arena, about 9,000 fans in there for Dave Allen. But the fight didn't go Allen's way. Makhmudov got the win on the scorecards: 115, 111, 116, 110, and 117, 109. And that was for the WBA Intercontinental Heavyweight belt. Allen lost the fight, and I don't think there was any debating that he lost the fight. I thought the refereeing was a bit weak, I've got to be honest. Makhmudov was doing an incredible amount of holding. Every time Allen stepped in and hit him with one shot, Makhmudov just wrapped him up and would not let go. And it was one of those frustrating fights. I think Allen kept walking into the same issues throughout the fight, and really needed to give himself just that half step less in order to just keep him in the pocket so he could throw. But Makhmudov wrapped him up well. As for Makhmudov's boxing, he boxed him really well. He used his range really well. Threw a lot of punches. You see heavyweight boxers, they don't throw a lot of volume. Makhmudov threw a lot of volume on Saturday. I thought he looked very good. He looked hittable for sure. And I think Allen probably could and should have hit him a lot more than he did. And I think a better heavyweight will certainly find Makhmudov's chin more frequently. But they're going to have to walk through some heavy shots to do it. Dave Allen is insanely durable. And I think Makhmudov actually broke his hand in the fight trying to put Dave Allen away and just wasn't able to do it. But I think Makhmudov is now signed to Matchroom, so we'll see what happens with him next. There's rumours of Anthony Joshua. There's rumours of other potential matchups for him. But he is a factor. Whether he's not a world championship winner, I don't think. But he's certainly someone who can be a factor in that heavyweight division. As for Dave Allen, refreshingly honest, leading into the fight and after the fight. Basically said he wasn't good enough. He said Makhmudov is a top 20 heavyweight. I'm not. But after the fight, Frank Smith from Matchroom said, there's still options here for him. And I know Eddie Hearn said similarly. I think fighting for the British title, fighting for European titles and things like this, Commonwealth maybe. These belts are there for the taking, I think, if you're Dave Allen. I think you could go that route. Still have big fights in the UK, still pack arenas, and without having to go up to the very top level and end up overreaching a little bit, which maybe he did on Saturday night. You know, he dared to be great. I think was what Frank Smith said. And unfortunately, he fell just short. But the event was great. Really enjoyed, like, the way Matchroom put their events on is superb. You know, they're really well packaged these days. Bilal Fawaz defeating Junaid Bostan in the co-main, majority decision win for Bilal Fawaz. That was for the English Super Welterweight title. That was a great fight. I really enjoyed that fight. Fawaz, I think, deservedly the winner. First scorecard awarded it as a draw. And the other two were 96-94, 96-95. And Fawaz's reaction afterwards, because weren't announced very, very clearly. They sort of, it was announced like it was a split decision where they were going to announce sort of opposing judges here, and it wasn't the case. It was a majority decision. They should have announced the 95-95 first, and then the other two scores without announcing the judge's name, and just say, and for the winner, blah blah blah, you know, via majority decision. But it all worked out in the end. I mean, Fawaz was very confused at the end, didn't quite realise that he'd won. He needed someone to tell him. And then all of a sudden, the reality hit him. And yeah, that was a nice moment. Junaid Bostan, much the younger fighter, I think he'll probably come back again. I think he'll be, and who knows, maybe we'll see another rematch. That was a rematch. So we'll see what happens with the potential trilogy. I think we could see that. It was an entertaining fight. I'd be amazed if they didn't rebook it because it was such a good one. Another fight that had a little bit of controversy to it was the WBA International Super Featherweight title bout between Josh Padley and Reece Bellotti. Bellotti boxed really well in this fight and looked to be ahead on the scorecards heading into maybe the last 4 rounds. Padley put his foot to the gas and looked to have gotten himself back into the fight. And by the end of the fight, it looked like it was going to go either way. Sort of 1 round either way, maybe even a draw. And then the scorecards are read out, and I think everybody was really surprised. Padley was given the win, which on the face of it, I think is fine. But the scorecards weren't indicative of what I watched anyway. 97-93 twice, and 99-92 in his favour, which looks like a blowout on the scorecards. And it was anything but. Bellotti, to me, was leading the fight through the midpoint of the fight. So, and I think Bellotti went on IFL TV afterwards and said it was effing outrageous, the scoring of the fight. I would agree with that. But yeah, it was a much closer fight than those scorecards suggested, but a good win for Josh Padley nonetheless. I think if either one of them had won by a round, you would be fine with that. But to win by that much, to win by that much is I don't know. I don't know what fight they were watching, but there you go. Padley gets the win. Bellotti will be seething for a bit, but I think if he looks at his performance, he'll think, okay, I did all right in that fight. You know, I've not got too much to be upset about with regards his own performance. So we'll see how he goes next. And first bout on the main card, Hamza Udin defeating Paul Roberts for the English flyweight title. Hamza looks like someone he's on his way to the top. He looks like a real talent, and looking forward to seeing his progression in the months and years ahead. I suspect he'll be back in there as soon as possible. He gets that fight won in the 5th round, TKO finish. So he's picked up the English flyweight title, and he's on his way up the flyweight division. But yeah, exciting stuff. Good card. Really enjoyed the fight. Really enjoyed the presentation. Like, I enjoy watching sort of the packaging of these events as well. The Zone do a really good job of putting these shows on, and like the arena was great. I can see why they still want Dave Allen to headline fight cards, because if he could produce atmospheres like that every time he fights, then you know you'd have him fight as often as possible. So, but that was a really entertaining night of fights. A little bit of refereeing controversy, I suppose you call it, or questionable refereeing, and definitely some scoring issues, but a really good night of fights up there in Sheffield, England. Okie dokie, before we leave you, let's talk about the card that we've got coming up this weekend from Vancouver, Canada. UFC Fight Night. Derrida versus Allen. A battle between two middleweight contenders. It was going to be Rainier Derrida versus Anthony Hernandez in what potentially could have been a number one contender fight. Hernandez had to pull out of the fight. Brendan Allen steps in. I don't know how this affects Rainier Derrida's chances now of earning himself a title fight. If he puts Brendan Allen away impressively, I think then the chance is still there. So we'll see how it goes. Brendan Allen has a chance to bounce himself straight back into contention after losing last time out. So we'll see how that one goes. Kevin Holland taking on Mike Malott. So the highest placed Canadian fighter on the card. Proper Mike Malott will be in a co-main event in a welterweight bout against Kevin Trailblazer Holland. Marlon Vera, Chito Vera taking on Ayman Zahabi at bantamweight. Manon Fiorot at women's flyweight. This is a good fight at women's flyweight division. Manon Fiorot taking on Jasmine Jasdavicius in a battle of contenders. If Jasmine Jasdavicius gets the win, I think she gets the title fight off the back of this. She's been in great form. She hasn't had that breakthrough to championship level yet. If she puts Manon Fiorot away in any way possible, even if she beats her by decision, I think she gets the title fight next. And it would be much deserved if she does. Bantamweights, Cody Gibson taking on Auri Kileng of China. And Carl Nelson of Canada taking on steamroller Matt Frivola will open up the main card. The prelims will see Charles Jourdain of Canada taking on England's own dangerous Davy Grant. That'll be a good fight. Looking forward to that. Bruno Gustavo da Silva taking on Park Hyun Sung at flyweight. Danny Barlow taking on Jordan Ribeiro de Santos at middleweight. Circle this one for fight of the night. Kyle Prepolek versus Drew Dober. Two guys who desperately need a win. Prepolek's in his second stint with the UFC, stepped in at short notice, took on Benoit Saint-Denis last time out. That's a tough way to come back into the UFC. He loses that fight, but did the UFC a solid. Now he gets Drew Dober, who is on, I think he's on a 3-fight skid. He's struggling a bit. Yeah, he lost 3 in a row, Drew Dober. He cannot afford to lose again, but he is such a crowd-pleasing, fun fighter to watch. So I can only see Dober going out there and swinging for the fences as per usual. Prepolek will look to put him away and get that first UFC win in his second stint with the promotion. So I think that could be a fight in the night contender. So keep your eye on that one. Women's strawweight, Stephanie Luciano taking on Ravena Oliveira. At middleweights, Azamat Bekoev against Yusri Belgarouge. And then kicking off the action will be a bantamweight fight between Melissa Croden and Tainara Lisboa. A few unfamiliar names on that card. It is a UFC fight night. A few debutants in there. A few who just had one fight. But there's a load of Canadian talent on that card. Most notably Mike Malott in the co-main event. Ayman Zahabi is involved there. Jasmine Jasdavicius, Cody Gibson, Carl Nelson. So there's loads of Canadian interest in that main card. So Cody Gibson not Canadian. What am I talking about? Carl Nelson is Canadian. So what you got 4 Canadians in action on that main card. So looking forward to seeing how that one goes. The UFC doesn't go to Canada that often. Certainly doesn't go to Vancouver that often. So I would expect there to be a particularly raucous crowd on Saturday night for all the Canadian fighters. That should be a good one. That is Saturday night on TNT Sports here in the UK. Prelims, as per usual, will be on UFC Fight Pass. Also this weekend we have UFC 78 from Cologne, Germany. That should be a good fight night as well. That will be on OKTAGON.tv. The main event will feature one of the stars of German mixed martial arts, Christian Ekelin, taking on Croatian veteran Ivica Truschek, who has had an insane amount of fights. He has had, good grief, 83 professional fights. That is madness. 83 professional fights taken on Christian Ekelin in the main event. Alina Dalazlan making a quick turnaround. She only fought last month. She's taken on Katarina Lerner in the bantamweight division. I would imagine that there's got to be a title shot in Alina Dalazlan's future. She's only 3-0, but she's looked really good in the octagon cage so far. They're gradually increasing the level of opponent for her. I don't think we're too far away from her being put in there for a belt. So if she gets a good win this weekend, particularly if it's another stoppage win as impressive as her last one, then we could see a championship belt up for grabs for her in the not too distant future. Heavyweights in the cage as Kasim Aras of Germany takes on Simon Biong. That'll be an interesting one. Frederick Vosgronier taking on Jesus Samuel Chavaria at light heavyweight. Now, there's 2 undefeated light heavyweights. Vosgronier is an interesting one. I mean, he seems like he's been marketed and pushed a lot by Octagon MMA. He's got that unique look about him. He looks like a hench Boris Johnson with the dodgy haircut. But he's had some not nice things to say about the promotion and stormed out of a press conference. It's just, I don't know. I don't know if he's being poorly advised, or another promotion has offered him an absolute ton of money and he's trying to get out of his Octagon contract. I don't know what it is. All I know is that he's not behaving like a poster boy. Octagon have treated him like a poster boy, and Vosgronier has not behaved like one. So I don't know. Hopefully these things get smoothed over and Vosgronier can become a big name for Octagon moving forward. But it almost feels like the Neanderthal, as he calls himself, almost feels that he's too big for the promotion already. Which you're 5-0 and you've had 3 fights in Octagon. I think you've got to slow your roll a little bit, get some wins, win a belt, build that star power that obviously you have. And then if you want to go on to bigger and better things after that, go for it. But yeah, strange stuff. But he's back in action and he's fighting in Germany. So there will be a lot of support for him. Dennis Ilbai versus Tio Smith at featherweight. Ilbai, one of the most exciting fighters on the Octagon roster. Patrick Vespasianzi at heavyweight taking on Denis Stojnic. That'll be a good fight at heavyweight. That's going to kick off the main. Is that going to kick off the main card? No, that's on the main card. But we've also got Igor Severino versus Khurshid Kakarov for the bantamweight title. Bit earlier on the fight card. Unusual to have a title fight early on in a fight card rather than in the main event. But the star power is at the top of the card in Christian Ekelin. Severino taking on Kakarov. Kakarov, the former PFL champion at bantamweight. Or PFL Europe champion, rather, taking on Severino. Severino, very, very dangerous, obviously. Was booted out of the UFC for biting, if you remember. So he now calls himself Hannibal Lecter. And now he's taking on Kakarov, who is very, very tough. And that'll be a really difficult fight for Severino. That's going to be a really good fight, actually. 9-1 for Severino, 13-1 for Kakarov. Just running down the rest of the card. Aryan Topalai returns against Hassan Kayani. Tamerlan Dulatov, he's one to watch against Enrique Melo. There's some good stuff on this card. That's going to be live on Octagon.tv on Saturday night. That's from the Lanxess Arena in Cologne. There we go. That is what we have on Saturday. We've got the UFC from Vancouver. We've got Octagon from Cologne. And it's another big night of mixed martial arts. Before we wrap things up, don't forget, give us a follow on the socials at RDX Sports on X, at RDX_sports on Instagram, and you can follow me across all the social channels at Simon Head Sport. Give us a like and a follow on YouTube. That is how you will get all your podcasts. You'll never miss a thing, and all the product related videos that we produce here at RDX Sports go out on the same channel as well, so you can stay up to date with the very latest in RDX gear as well. Lots of fights coming up this weekend. Enjoy them all, and I'll speak to you